Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on getting the most out of GoAnywhere with a focus on secure forms. I'm here with my co-hosts, Chris Spargen and Scott Messick. Welcome, gentlemen. Before we kick things off, I'll remind you that the event is scheduled for approximately 45 minutes, and we're recording the event, and we're going to send out a link to everyone afterwards so that you have it. You can feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. We have some team members on the line who will help us get those answered. In addition, if there's time, we'll go ahead and answer a few live at the end. Lastly, we will have a survey that'll display at the close of the webinar. If you'd fill that out for us, it gives us great feedback on the parts of the presentation that were helpful for you and gives us good feedback. Then in addition, if there were any questions that weren't answered for you during the event, you can ask them during that as well. All right, let me introduce you to our presenters. Chris Spargen is the Manager of Support and Services for the GoAnywhere team. He has worked all facets of support and services and now has the pleasure of leading these two great teams that focus on the customer experience. Scott Messick is the Senior Sales Engineer with Help Systems and is based in New Jersey. He has over 20 years of IT experience working in and managing IT teams in highly regulated industries. In this role, he works with and supports the largest Clearswift and GoAnywhere customers and prospects across North America. Chris and Scott, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. So just to look real quick at what we're going to cover today, as you can see in our agenda, we're really going to do a deep dive into GoAnywhere Secure Form functionality. We're going to give you some use cases, why we see our customers leveraging secure forms, and then we'll give you a live demonstration and talk about how to not only leverage secure forms, but more importantly, secure that process. And then we'll, as Angela alluded to, have Q&A at the end, but at any point, if you'd like to ask questions through GoToWebinar, feel free to do that. As Angela said, we have people that will be monitoring that and trying to help answer your questions. So thanks for your time today, and Scott, take it away.
Yep, thanks a lot, Angela and Chris, for the intro. Thanks to everyone for taking the time out of your day to join us to learn about secure forms. Just a quick comment, as we know, everybody's pretty much virtual by this point in time. If you have any issues with audio or anything along those lines, you could dial in. You might be able to hear things a little bit better. So today we're going to be focusing specifically on secure forms. As you know, GoAnywhere does much more than just secure forms, and if you have any questions, as Angela mentioned, you can log them here, or if you want to take something offline with us specifically in a little more detail, please make sure that you drop us a note to set up a personalized session to review any aspect of our managed file transfer solution. So we're going to talk about, as we've mentioned, secure forms and what are secure forms. A couple of quick points here. The first thing is, you ever filled out an online survey or completed benefits enrollment process electronically? Or have you ever provided information to a vendor, maybe about a case that you're working on, or on a personal note, filled out an application for a loan or credit application electronically? Many of you probably answered yes to at least one of these questions, and you should be aware that most of these processes, or by this point in time, all these processes that I've just described are most likely using a secure form of some form to front end all of that. So what are secure forms? By definition, HTML forms designed to securely capture information. The information that's captured is typically used for another process. The secure form submission can be secured with SSL certificates that are used to encrypt content because you want to make sure that nobody can hijack any personal information or banking statements, social security numbers, or anything along these lines, or maybe even a secure online voting ballot, which we can all relate to in today's day and age. you want to make sure that no one's able to capture that content as it's being transmitted. The input fields that are in secure forms can either be configured with black or white answers, such as yes or no. They can also be loaded or pre-populated with information, such as what's presented on your screen now. You can see here that we have a trainer survey after a class or some curriculum is taken, and what we're asking here is to rate the class as well as the instructor, the material and the instructor. Additional information such as tool tips, also shown here on the screen, are available to help guide decision-making process, especially if there's percentages or a number scale. They can also be configured to read values from a database or to populate available choices. An example would be filling out a support case that you're working on, maybe with a vendor, and you've got to upload an attachment, or you've got to provide some additional information to the case. So what you may have to do is you may have to enter a pre-existing case. And in this case, a secure form could be built to reference a database that's got cases that could be, for instance, assigned to your specific account or you as the customer. And then finally, the forms themselves are presently available in 11 different languages. So a little bit more about how to customize forms now. If you've got a requirement to submit a form, perhaps from another application, GoAnywhere Secure Forms supports the ability to use SOAP or REST requests. So if you've got a process, maybe not an individual user who's going to assign into an HTML form to populate information, you may have to use a process to upload content into a secure form. So GoAnywhere fully supports that. The forms can be made public or anonymous for public access. They can be private with restricted access, or they can be made publicly available with a secondary check, maybe to confirm an individual's identity. So they're very flexible and customizable from an authentication standpoint or lack thereof. One of the items we're going to demo today is the ability to go through a multi-form workflow with several steps along the way. So as you can see here on the presentation, you've got a benefits enrollment form. It's pretty basic, but you've got a secure form landing page just with some basic information you need to populate, and then you identify or you determine whether or not you're going to enroll in your company's specific benefits. If you choose to do so, you'll be rerouted to a secondary form where you're going to make some elections, or if you choose not to do so, maybe your significant other has benefits, or you're just going to opt not to do benefits, you just get a summary email and you won't continue to the next step. And so in this case, a summary email could be sent either way, whether you click yes and then you complete your benefits. GoAnywhere can then summarize your selections, wrap them up maybe in a PDF file or something along those lines, and then send the results to the individual who submitted the benefits enrollment process, or just a summary email with your choices, as you can see that's presented here on the screen. And then using our advanced workflows, which is a major differentiator, of course, between GoAnywhere and other vendors in this space, you can unleash hundreds of tasks as a result of a single choice or multiple choices made during a secure form submission. Summary of options chosen within the form, attachments with benefit selections, as I previously mentioned, or variables to trigger other actions. Advanced workflows can also be used to export content from a secure form to populate a database, upload a file to another platform, for instance. You may also have a scenario where you're building a front end for, as previously shown, excuse me, in the next screen, what you're going to see is an attachment where you upload files to a case, you populate information within the form, and then using our cloud connectors, maybe Salesforce as an example, that content can be shipped off to a Salesforce backend with our cloud connector. And we have about 40 cloud connectors available at the present time. Custom messages presented to users in the secure form response directly on the website are also available after the secure form is submitted via an email, maybe, or an email response, as you can see here on the screen, or text messages. These are just a few of the options that are available that you have at your disposal using our advanced workflows and secure forms together. You may also have a requirement to include a link maybe to terms and conditions or something along those lines. All that's possible using GoAnywhere Secure Forms.
Yeah. Hey, Scott,
Yeah,
real
sure.
quick, just one thing I wanted to add into that was, the public use of the form. So one thing that we have certainly seen a fair bit of our customers using forms for is to have, not necessarily have a user associated to each and every form, but have, especially some of our you could say smaller to even mid-size government entities who, maybe they have a form on their public website that they need, either the citizens or constituents to fill out for a number of different actions. That public form is really handy. And as I think Scott's going to allude to in here, we're also going to talk about some of the potential caveats or side effects of having public forms. So go ahead, Scott.
Yep, good point. Thanks a lot, Chris. So now we'll talk a little bit more about why using secure forms. A couple of examples we'll go through. You may have a requirement to encrypt content that's submitted to a secure form or a secure website. You may have a requirement to brand or to customize an HTML website being used for a secure form, as you can see here in the example presented on your screen. You may also have a requirement to pre-populate input values in certain cases, as previously mentioned in the form that we showed earlier. You saw some pre-populated values that had course selections. Those were manually defined. You don't necessarily need to use manually defined forms. You can reference a database, as I previously mentioned. All these fields are completely customizable. GoAnywhere also allows for Dlp and Threat Protection scanning of attachments. If secure forms must grant this type of flexibility, as Chris mentioned, you need to publish something that's available for everyone. And the example we're using here on this screen is to upload attachments to a case. You want to make sure that you're not ingesting any form of active content, virus, or PII or PCI that you may not want within your environment. And so all these capabilities that we've been describing are fully available within the GoAnywhere Secure Forms module. We provide threat remediation as well. So this could be in the form of viruses or attachments with active content. In today's day and age, most active content could come in the form of maybe an attachment. For instance, you're being asked to open an attachment to look at a billing statement. This is how something would come in via email. But if someone were to take that document and upload that to a secure form, someone opening it, not necessarily knowing, thinking that it's maybe tied to a case or something along those lines, they could open that document, which could spawn some active content to run once that document is opened, or once maybe a hyperlink or a macro is clicked, maybe with a picture on it inside of the document. So we can rip all of that content out of documents that are uploaded and pass the clean content along. And of course, we've got the DLP controls as well. So that could be in the form of PII or PCI or whatever is most meaningful to you and your organization. Finally, we have media type protection as well. So this comes in the form of, for instance, you may only have a requirement to upload PDFs or Word documents, and you don't want any other types of documents to be uploaded. So we can correct this by looking at file signatures, and we can configure GoAnywhere to only allow those true media types that you want to allow. We can either blacklist or whitelist. I'm going to dig into the DLP and the threat protection component shortly. Just one last point here, and as previously mentioned, with our advanced workflows, you could be used to automate all the back-end processes, like for instance, sending confirmation email messages or data gathered within a secure form on the back end. You might need to use it to fill a database or a flat file or to feed another process. Chris, did you have anything that you wanted to add here?
Yeah, I think really just reiterating that, especially as remote workforce and really just over the last few years, security trends have continued to be, I would say on the forefront of a lot of our customers and prospective customers' minds. I guess that's the beauty of this DLP integration that GoAnywhere has, is on the back end, the caveat to having a public form would be any bot potentially, or any malicious user could upload content into GoAnywhere. And ultimately, how do we not only provide functionality like secure forms, but security behind that? I think that's the major takeaway that I think of, and that many of our clients have expressed. So moving on.
Yep. Okay. Thanks a lot. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit more about the threat protection and DLP engine. So a little bit more about Clearswift and the integration between Clearswift and GoAnywhere. Clearswift's initial product that we brought to market was around 30 years ago, and it was an email filtering solution. One of the first that was brought to the market by the name of Minesweeper. Some of you may have heard of that before. And so that product evolved over the years and has morphed into a variety of products, one of which being our Icap Gateway, and this is the component that ties into GoAnywhere. And so all of this special sauce, all of these components that we've been working on for the last 30 years, we can unleash within our Icap Gateway, allowing the GoAnywhere Secure Forms, or really any file transfer within GoAnywhere to have the DLP and the threat protection scanning built into it. So our major component is our deep content inspection, often referred to as DCI. And so I'm just going to go into a little bit more of the details about DCI that kind of summarizes some of the points that you see here on the slide. So DCI is the ability for us to scan inbound and outbound content across multiple communication platforms. So it's not just email. Now we can handle the GoAnywhere traffic as well. It's also adaptive redaction. So what do we mean by adaptive redaction? It's a couple of different things. This is kind of our special sauce. So it's the ability for us to move away from a traditional approach where you have a black or white answer. You either allow or you disallow. And with Clearswift now, with our redaction engine, we can allow minus the offending content. So for instance, if a document has active content in it, we can take the active content out. If a document has a social security number in it and you don't want to allow the full social security number to be present. Perfect example would be banking statements. Everyone has moved to virtual. All of the banks have online banking now. Let's just say you need to download a banking statement, and you might front end that with a secure form. So someone downloads a banking statement, and I've seen this time and time again. Many of the banks right now, that banking statement will have the full-fledged 16-digit credit card number in it. Not all banks, but some banks have this information in it. And so what Clearswift brings to the table now is we can take perhaps the first 12 digits and strip them out and put asterisks in there. And so you may have seen this with some banks that have started to do this by now. And so this is what our redaction engine gives you. It also gives you the ability to look for PII and PCI inside of images. And so when secure forms are used, people have tried to streamline things as much as possible, maybe with their phones or iPads or mobile devices. They're taking pictures of things and they're uploading content. And so now what we can do is we can scan for text inside of those images, which is a clear differentiator between Clearswift and some of the other vendors that are available. And so we've got a couple of other features, anti-steganography, which allows for us to detect concealing of messages inside of images. Document metadata, we can also strip document metadata. In other words, uploading and downloading content, oftentimes the versions of Adobe or Word are not necessary. And people can use this, malicious individuals can use this against you because they can target your organization if they know what versions of software that you're using. So we can strip all that content out of that, and it gives you really the ability to allow just what's truly important to your organization as it's coming in or leaving an environment. And that may be different between one department or another, and it may vary between one organization or another. So there's a lot of granularity that's built into our solutions, different rule sets for different groups of individuals or different companies. You've got a merger, you pick up another organization, and that organization needs a different set of security policies. We can adapt to that, as well as GoAnywhere allowing different policies for different groups of users. And then finally, data classification. So now we can incorporate data classification components into this solution as well. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about use cases for secure forms?
Yeah, absolutely. So secure forms, you know, as you've probably gathered by now, I'm sure everyone's familiar with, to some degree, with, say, like a simple Google form, or a, you know, you've got like survey forms from SurveyMonkey and all sorts of open source forms that exist. But, you know, these are pretty simple in terms of the transaction being, you know, client or user connects, fills out the form, submits it, and then the responses are, you know, stored somewhere where the owner of the form can go and look at that manual process, right? You know, where secure forms is obviously far advanced to that is just in the workflow logic. So we wanted to talk through a couple use cases that we've observed from customers, but I think the key takeaway from this is between the automation that's built into the form and then the, you know, I would say just powerful advanced workflow engine that GoAnywhere has, really the use cases are endless. And one thing I wanted to mention was it was in 2 major releases ago for us, in our 6.5 release, that we actually added the capability to have multi-step forms. And so that opened up a whole nother, you know, I would say, avenue for our customers to be able to use secure forms, not just for one single submission and then the workflow to do things, but as Scott showed you earlier, if there's a multi-step process here where there's potentially multiple forms involved, now you've got the logic of GoAnywhere's advanced workflows that can route you to, you know, the relevant next form. So this really opens the door to much greater business process automation, you know, in a sense. And so some of the use cases we wanted to discuss here was we've helped customers set up, you know, secure forms for probably my favorite one. I might have had something to do with this one, so it's near and dear to my heart. But in the 2016 election, we actually leveraged secure forms for absentee voter ballots. So we had a customer who needed to ultimately provide our overseas military voters with a means of, you know, securely transmitting their ballots, you know, to their respective county. So the way that we were able to architect that was by leveraging a secure form in GoAnywhere that was publicly available. We, as Scott was alluding to earlier, and we have already discussed, the caveat to that being that anyone could submit that form. So the first step to that was to make sure that we were scanning and quarantining content that was found to be malicious as a first step. And then once that, we'll say that file passed inspection, or multiple files, I should say, had passed that inspection. At that point, then we looked at information on the form to see what county did this, you know, user need to submit their ballot to. Once we were able to take that variable, we distributed that file to the relevant group of people in each county. There were multiple users from each county, and so we had to actually look up in a database and find, you know, from this county, these are the users that we need to send to. We actually used GoAnywhere as well and our GoDrive functionality, so those users could collaborate on the ballot that was submitted. And we finished that process out after placing the file in their GoDrive directory, their working directory, where they were collaborating on the ballots and processing them. We would send an email notification out letting them know, you know, that that process had been finished. And as you'll see when Scott gets into the secure forms area, we redirected the user at that point. We thanked them and redirected them to the state's website. So that's one pretty exciting, and what I would say actually lifted secure forms into production or made secure forms a reality for GoAnywhere, because that was the primary driver behind what initially brought secure forms out. Another example that I have, a little more recent one, is a customer that needed to accept RFP forms from any of their clientele within their city limits. So pretty similar process. Ultimately included uploading certain documentation and defining their account number with the city. Now this one was not a public form. It was tied to a web user login. And the nice thing about that is that certain information from the form could be auto-populated due to the fact that we had a web user account. We had an ID to identify who it was that was logging in and filling this form out. And some of the pre-populating references that Scott made earlier were how we ultimately were able to use information from a database about that user profile to pre-populate certain fields and make it less, I would just say more user-friendly for the user to fill out the form. They didn't have to do as much. And on the back end, where they before were having everything go to one single email address and then had users that would have to sift through the content, now they're using secure forms to ultimately securely provide a means to get those files again to the relevant parties. And there was some decision and logic that we had in the workflow where the user, ultimately it went to a certain group of users based on the organizations that those users resided from. And so, at the end of the day, there's a ton of flexibility in how we're seeing customers use this. So some of the other examples that we'd listed in here, things like filling out maybe an HR onboarding document. The multi-step business workflows is a really neat example with the benefits enrollment, I think. It just, again, shows the power of, what you do with secure forms is similar to advanced workflows. If you've got some creative developers helping churn out processes like this, then really I'd say the sky's the limit of what you can do with secure forms. So those are a couple real world examples that we have helped customers incorporate. And I think Scott's got a really neat one here that he's going to show you in a minute.
Yep, cool. Thanks, Chris. So these are a couple of areas that we're going to dig into in the live demo. I think many of you are probably done with listening to Chris and I speak, and you actually see the product in use, which we're excited about showing you here. So a couple of things we're going to go through is the voting ballot for one, and how secure forms can be used to electronically secure a voting ballot. The multi-step process, which Chris and I both talked about. We're going to use a benefits enrollment example. A survey where we're going to obtain information once a class is taken. A survey is sent to someone who took a class. They fill out a bunch of information, and then we can, on the tail end of that, we can take that data, maybe populate in a database or to field and to feed another process. In this example, we're just going to feed it to an Excel spreadsheet and clean it up and make the spreadsheet look nice and pretty. And then we'll incorporate the DLP and the threat protection module as well. So with that being said, should be able to see my screen now, Chris, correct?
Yep, we can see our Outlook login there.
You got it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the benefits enrollment process. For the purpose of the demo, we've kind of streamlined a couple of things here, and we've just made it look just pretty basic. It's extremely customizable. We'll get into a little bit of that as we go through the demo. So I'm just going to put a employee ID in here. I'm going to put my personal information in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my lab email address, but in a production environment, of course, this could be any email address. We're going to stick with the lab environment. So I'm going to do two things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enroll in a, I'm going to choose not to enroll, and I'm going to choose to enroll and just show you the multi-step process, how it's a little bit different. So I'm going to sign into my email browser. And I'm not going to save that. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select no. Oh, maybe I did not put my entire last name in here. Oh, excuse me. I was on the case attachment. My apologies for that. Let me switch this over to the benefits enrollment landing page. That's where I thought that I was. Okay, so we're gonna go back here. I think what happened was I had just inadvertently put some information into the wrong page. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna select no. So a summary email, you can see here in the secure form, I've generated a message that basically says, thank you for time to complete the form. You'll receive an email summary, summarizing everything. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run through this process one more time, but I'm going to select yes for the benefits enrollment instead. Here's my email address, and I'm going to click yes. So what should happen here when I click yes is that I move to a second step within the process, as you can see here. And so while that first step did not bring me to another form because I choose not to enroll in the company benefits, what winds up happening here is I just get this email, benefits election confirmation, and it's just basically I've used variables within a advanced workflow, and I'm just mentioning here you've elected not to enroll in the benefits package for next year. If you feel there's an error, please contact Human Resources. So this is essentially how we can handle this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to complete the benefits form enrollment. And what I'm going to do here again is I'm going to put this email address. I'll say I've got 4 dependents in total. I'm just going to go ahead and select this high deductible plan. I want dental insurance, of course. I want vision. I'm going to do the life insurance, of course, short-term and long-term disability. I'm going to elect not to do that. I'm going to contribute to 401k. And I'm going to just say something like 6%, and then I'm going to go ahead and submit this. And so similar thing here, you'll get an email summarizing your benefits. So for the purpose of the demo, I haven't wrapped this up in anything more than an email, and we've just cleaned this up so that you get some very basic information here, a summary of everything that you've chosen. What we could do is we could wrap this up into something cleaner, maybe an attachment or something along those lines. But again, for the purpose of the presentation, it's pretty basic, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the power that you have here. Before I move to the next use case, maybe I'll take a quick pause and see if Chris wanted to add anything to that.
Oh, I think you did a good job on that, Scott.
All right, you got it. So the next part that we'll go through here is we'll do the voting ballot. And so let me just, here's my annual shareholders. So sometimes you receive these in the mail. This is from my particular company, my fake company here, example company. You'll see here that there's an election of directors, and I'm going to vote for one of these individuals. And then I've got some information about some company proposals for the upcoming year. I put some information about myself in here, the last 4 digits of my social to confirm my identity. I'm going to now with a back-end process confirm that. I don't necessarily need to put this here. It just depends upon how elaborate this voting form would need to be. And so moving this electronically is a secure way to handle an election process like this. And then we can send an email summarizing everything, of course. And then we've just put a note here that just mentions, as we all know, that some people may prefer to vote in person. And if this is the case, we're basically saying is contact example company, here's our number here, and sign the form. And then what's going to wind up happening is when you contact this number, there's going to be an automated message, or you'll receive somebody that just says, okay, do me a favor, please make your selections, sign it, and then bring the form into our facility or something along those lines. And then as you can see here, I've put a little more information about the annual shareholders meeting itself, the date and the time, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and vote for Christine. I'm going to vote against everyone else, and I'm going to say, yeah, why not? We're going to go ahead and go forward with both of these. We've got Ernst & Young here that we're going to sign up again for our independent accountants, and yeah, we're going to open up 2 new offices. We've just hired a bunch of new employees in those areas. I'll put my name in here. I've got put my email address down in here for the summary. I'll just put some fake information here. And again, this can be configured to reference another source behind the scenes. I don't need an email confirmation, and I'm going to just go ahead and click submit. My apologies. I've got a switch within the secure form that references another form. I'm going to demonstrate that here shortly. Sorry for that. It's calling another form that we just went through. So sorry for that, but you can understand the point. I'll show you in the secure form where I just need to slightly reconfigure that. Any points you wanted to add to that, Chris? What I'll do is I'm going to demonstrate the secure form configuration in the advanced workflow before I move to another secure form example.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the next. Let's show them how the magic happens, right?
You got it. Yep. So now just to point out where I went wrong here. I had copied another secure form, and what's happening is in the secure form, so here is just the response that says thank you, but what's happening is I am in my advanced in my secure form itself, I'm referencing a project that I was using for something else, so my apologies for that. So here is basically, this is a straightforward form where I just got a response. I don't have any variables defined here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the benefits enrollment form that I just had mentioned. Here is the benefits enrollment secure form. And so what I'm doing here is it's fairly straightforward. I have all of my variables that I'm printing out to a job log. All of these variables are fed from the secure form itself. And then what I'm doing is I'm just sending an email confirmation. As you can see here, I'm using variables that are pulled from the project when I send the summary email. And then here's the secure form response itself, which is presented on the web page, the secure form, the HTML page itself. And so now what I do is I'm going to take that secure form, going into my secure form manager. I will show you the benefits enrollment process. Go into my components here, and so you can see fairly basic. Here's my my yes or no answers here, and then I've got coverage plan, and I've populated all this information in here. Here's my variables that are associated with these coverage plans, and then as you can see, I just pick and choose which components, text fields, where I want to populate information, where I've had required or mandatory fields, and I can just continue to elaborate on this secure form as additional information is required. I've got areas where I've got I've got drop downs, or I've got multi-choice selections, where I'm going to show you here in a moment. So I'm going to move over to my trainer survey, which I'm going to demonstrate in a short moment, where I populated some the training classes that were available to be taken. So this is a multi-option checkbox, and I pre-populate all this information. As I mentioned, I don't necessarily need to manually pre-populate these. I can actually read these from a database if I've got an internal source of information where I want to pull that information back from. So you build the secure form itself. We configure how we want to make this form available to be accessed. So in this case, I've made all of these forms public with no authentication. I don't necessarily need to do that. Here is my REST and SOAP enablement where other processes could be used to fill out content. And so I can determine whether or not who I want to actually assign this form to. In this case, it's an anonymous, or I can actually dictate with whether I'm using LDAP to reference another authentication database, or if I want to use GoAnywhere to provide authentication. I can now pick and choose who I want to have access to this form here. And so I'm going to move right along into two other use cases, unless Chris wanted to elaborate on anything that I've just shown.
No, I think you've done a good job of showing all the flexibility.
You got it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move into the trainer survey. And so we're going to give out a gift card as a result of the trainer survey as well, if you would be so kind to fill this out. And so now I'm just going to put here, this is my company, and I'm just going to populate my first name, last name, my email address for my lab environment, of course, and this was the class that I chose. We did something on GoDrive. I like the trainer. I like the course. Everything is as high as possible. You can see I've got my tooltip here, as I mentioned, where we're just displaying a little information about the choices. I'm just going to put here that, yeah, I'm just going to tell the form here that Scott was the best trainer that ever presented this material. I'm going to pat myself on the back, no suggestions. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to submit this, and let me do this really quick. Sorry for that. I think what's happening is I have too many forms open. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to close those forms, and I'm going to run through that one more time. Perhaps this is where this is reading this information. So I'm going to go back to this trainer survey. Sorry about that. Let's populate my name in here again. Go back here. Yes, yes, best class ever. And I'm gonna go ahead and submit that. And suggestion, I made this mandatory. So here's another good point here. Any mandatory values we can actually display here if something isn't filled out. So in this case, I put every one of these fields is mandatory. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put nothing here, submit that. Oh, what did I miss here? So let's go ahead now. Apologies for that. And let's look at where our process broke. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually look at our job log. And we're going to move down here, and we're going to see write Excel file, see program files, invalid. Oh, looks like we've got a spreadsheet that can't be updated for some reason, which so you can see here that we've got every step along the way that's been logged. And for some reason, we cannot, we can't actually write to the CSV file. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this share. It's possible that I've got a duplicate name. Maybe I put the name in this twice. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open, for the purpose of the presentation, I'm going to open up this spreadsheet, and I'm going to show you the end result, which should be something along these lines. So I'm feeding a spreadsheet where I've got everyone's name in the spreadsheet that filled out the form, the class that they took, the email address, and basically every component that they filled out, I've documented here. So you can see that this was logged here. I have to take a look at my code to figure out exactly what didn't write to the spreadsheet, but I'll clean that up here. But you can see here that this was logged successfully. And every time someone attends a class, when they complete that survey, what happens is another line is created in this spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is, it doesn't have to be this spreadsheet, but I'm using this for the purpose of the presentation. It could be a database or another document or another something else that's fed with the results of the survey. You can see here that I put some custom header values in here as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce back over into the project to show you some of the logic that's inside the project. And so what we have here is when the secure form is kicked off, we're creating a workspace, which is a holding area for the file. So what I'm doing is I'm printing out all the variables that are assigned inside of the secure form itself. And I'm pumping everything out to a CSV file, because what I'm going to do with that CSV file now is I'm going to read that file and I'm going to use that content to create something a little more elaborate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some variables. I'm going to read that file. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use our data translation component to actually write an Excel spreadsheet. So here's what I'm doing is I'm going to append to the file. Here's my output file that I'm writing to, and we're doing some column headings. And now I'm setting a header, I'm setting a title, and then you can see here that I'm coloring various forms within the spreadsheet, and then I've got some column options as well. So what I'm doing is I'm basically putting each component that was inside of that secure form into a separate column, so that when the data is written, it's nice and clean across the board. Then what I'm doing is I'm doing a little cleanup task where I'm deleting the original CSV that was written, and then I'm sending a confirmation email to the individual who took the class as well. So this is end-to-end how all of this is structured. I've got the secure form, I've got variables I'm defining within the secure form, I'm writing all of that content into a project, and then I'm extracting that information and writing it to a subsequent Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be Excel spreadsheet. You can see here that we've got a lot of other things that we can do here. And so that's end-to-end how this entire process will work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the last use case that I would like to present today, which has to do with DLP and threat protection. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move down to my upload attachments to a case. So you've seen this screenshot in the presentation. What I'm going to do here is I have a few different examples of content that are going to be uploaded. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my information in here. I'm going to put my email address in here, and then I'm going to put a sample case number. As I mentioned, I could reference another source that had case numbers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a test file. So I have a JPEG here. When I open this, you'll see here that I've got it's a fake account statement. And so you have an account number that's here, and then you have an account number that's here. They're labeled two different things, but I'm using our DLP engine in order to look for account numbers. It could be any content that you decide to look for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this location, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upload this to this case, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to submit this. So what should happen is I get this thank you upload successful, and now in my folder where I have what I'm doing is, because the secure forms content that's uploaded is encrypted, you can't really read it from the flat file system. What I'm doing is inside the project, I'm sending a copy to an alternate location, could be for another business process, but I'm using this to demonstrate this. So you can see here now that I've taken the first name and last name, I created a folder, I placed that JPEG here, and you can see here that with our DLP engine, we've masked this content. And so this is very valuable, because now what we're showing is our ability to make sure that there's certain information that you don't want to allow to be transferred, you have that option here. And so one more thing before we pause and we finish up the session with any questions is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to now upload something that's banned, like, for instance, an executable. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take that executable, I'm going to put someone else's name in here. I'm going to put my email address in here for my lab environment, enter my case details. Now, what should happen is it should tell me that it's not allowed. As you can see here, your upload is not allowed as it contains content that is not permitted by example company. So what I've done in my advanced workflow is I've told GoAnywhere to not allow banned files. So let me just get over to my upload attachments to case. Excuse me, that's I want to get over to my project, upload attachments to case. And now what you see here is I've got logic based upon what the response from the attachment scanning is. So 2040 is a clean attachment. A 200 is a modified attachment, which means like a DLP violation where we stripped some content out. And then a 403 is a straight block. So that was a banned file or a virus or something along those lines. So you can see here, we delete and then we just send an email confirmation that basically states, hey, dear Dim Johnson, your attachment upload was not allowed as it contained content that was not permitted by example company. Please contact this email address if you have any questions or concerns. You can see here that I've even spit out the case number as well, so you can reference that within the email message. So that being said, that concludes the demo part of this presentation. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to hand this over back to Angela, I believe.
Hey, Scott, I have a question real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. You want me to go back over to the demo?
Yeah, if you could just pull up GoAnywhere's admin client again. I was just curious if you could kind of show me if I needed to go back and look at a secure form submission, maybe for auditing purposes, how would I go about doing that?
Yep, so I'm guessing you're referring to a completed job or the secure form log.
The secure form log, I think. Yeah, we got some good auditing looks into the completed jobs, which shows, you know, the admin users, everything that we need to look at there. But yeah, perfect. And I can talk through this. I'm being partially facetious here. So, so yeah, as you all are aware now, we're obviously running secure forms as a module within our HTTPS, you know, web server in GoAnywhere. And so this will show you some of the granular activity here that you can see is taking place. So if you needed to go and track one down and maybe see, you know, what user did this come from? What was their IP address? There's low-level logs located here, as well as pop over to services for me and secure forms. And let's just go to that last form you submitted there. Perfect. Take the more actions icon next to that.
Let me go back there.
There you go. Awesome. And let's view the submitted forms for that one specifically. Perfect. And just click on one of those, yeah, payload IDs. That'd be perfect. Awesome. So this is a good way to go back and granularly see, you know, when was this form submitted? It tells you the job number that it fired off. And if you hit done here, Scott, that allows you just to go in and look at the form granularly, and then if you need to go and look at the job number to see maybe why something failed, then from here you could just take that hyperlink as well. So really just shows, I guess, the breadth of GoAnywhere's auditing that, you know, allows you to really trace things from, you know, form submission through the whole workflow process, which is extremely helpful if you're in that multi-step process and maybe you've got 10 different total forms that a user may need to fill out. And, you know, instead of having to, I guess, yeah, it's laid out very nicely. So you're able to just kind of follow the breadcrumbs, so to speak.
Good
All
point.
right.
Thanks for elaborating on that. So let me just switch back to little thanks everyone for attending. We're gonna switch this back over to Angela, I believe.
Yeah,
Actually,
thanks.
Scott, if you, I was gonna say we got a good question on here, and I know Angela doesn't have GoAnywhere accessible, so I may ask you to present again because I'm going to answer Ted's question by having you navigate. So great question, Ted. He was asking if you wanted to use a form with authentication against Active Directory, do we need to add a web user for each of our 4,000 users, or would it simply pass through the username password and if AD says it's okay, allow them in. Failing that, is there a way to sync web users to LDAP? So yes and yes for both of those. So yeah, Scott, if you go down to login methods for me, and let's just click on example companies LDAP server there. Perfect. Go to your web users tab for me, and here is where we have settings that will ultimately solve that, Ted. So we do need to define, GoAnywhere needs to be able to look up web users, but that second checkbox you see there for the create user automatically during login, if you want to open a form up to your company, but you only want web users created in the event they legitimately need to use your service, then this is a good way to accomplish that. Optionally, there's the fourth checkbox down, enforces group membership. So if you've got a group within Active Directory that houses all of the users that you need to use the service, then this is a way to also only grab web users and create web user accounts for legitimate users that you have. So you got flexibility both ways.
Yeah, and you can sync these or choose not to sync them. The sync piece would be if you actually want to pre-populate user accounts, which in most cases, from our experience, most organizations choose not to do this. But you can if you choose to, or you can just, for instance, link to a specific group or an OU. And so when people sign in that are in that group or in that OU, accounts are created. And then we've also got the multi-factor authentication piece. If you have a requirement, if you've got a requirement to tie into like for instance an RSA or maybe an email confirmation, and then you can also do some form of a self-provisioning. We can see here you can do some self-provisioning if you choose to as well.
Awesome. Looks like that one answered it for Ted, so we'll move on to the next one, and that is for Carl. Can we embed these forms? Can we pass parameters to forms? So absolutely. Would you mind pulling up the embed within iframe option that we have there, Scott? I know we had touched on that briefly in the presentation. And
the secure form itself?
Yeah, go into your form manager and just click on any random form there.
Talking about right here.
Perfect. Actually, yeah, allow embedding from in your public access area. There you go. Just scroll down just a smidge. Right there, you're on it. See, you've got your no website option there. Perfect. So we can embed this, and let's see. As far as passing parameters to forms, that you can also do. Real quick, would you pull up the user guide for me, Scott, right on that page? And I want to show, this will be really handy for, for any one of you that have GoAnywhere installed. This user guide is, it's our full user guide encapsulated into the product. So if you actually go to your secure form, I think it's the quick start on the left-hand side, quick start for secure forms is where we have an article on pre-populating secure forms. There you go. Well, and I know we've got a couple other questions here and we're almost to the end of time here. So, but this is gonna be where, Carl, if you want to look into this a little bit further, we do have the quick start for the forms and we show you how to pre-populate fields if you're gonna have like a web developer pass, certain information behind the scenes. So great question. All right. Yeah, actually, so Mikel and Buedo, it looks like are both asking about the drop-down selector and database, using database to pre-populate that. Go into your
secure form itself. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. That's even better. Choose the drop-down component for us, please.
Yep.
Right.
Over here, and you've got your option
Yep.
source.
Perfect. And so that allows you to define your SQL or your database server that you're going to connect to, what query you want to run, and then you can choose the parameters accordingly. So the answers to that would be yes and yes. And then if you have any follow-up questions about how to use the database values for dropdowns, absolutely let us know. And we will finish with Carl's last question there, which is about form validations. That is something that we currently have on our roadmap. I would say currently the validation, it's really the workflow. So if you have certain fields that, you know, maybe, yeah, I'd say, let's say you need to validate, social security number, certain string. Currently, the project logic would be the best way to ultimately leverage that, but we can also define that within your project. So there is a way to accomplish it now, but I most likely what you're asking is there a way that it can be natively embedded into the form? And that is on our roadmap. So, and then final question here, can we limit the total number of file uploads per user? The answer to that one would be it's limited within the form itself. Unfortunately, we don't have one currently per user, but as all things go anywhere, your feedback is how we improve this product. So if that is a requirement, absolutely.
We can actually do this with the threat protection engine, because what we could do is we could pass variables like the user who submitted the form to our threat protection and DLP engine, and within there we can actually limit the number of attachments that are allowed to be uploaded. So I think we can do this.
Yeah, we could respond with an error if they submit too many files, but they would still be able to technically submit the form. So depending on which of those requirements you need to satisfy, Buedo, just let us know. As I said earlier, we always want to know how do our customers want to use the product in further ways, and that's how we make it better, is we got to get that feedback. So great questions for everyone, and I know we are over time here. So I guess Scott or Angela, do you want to wrap us up?
Yep, you bet. Yes, great questions, and thank you all for hanging on the line with us while we get those answered. If anybody has any additional questions, use that survey at the end that's going to pop up here once we close the webinar. Go ahead and submit any additional questions that you have there. And then I believe that is all we had for today. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate all your help today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Take care.